All right, members. This is a special meeting of the PTSE. I now call it to order. We have in fact passed 10:45 and we have formed a quorum. For today's special meeting, there's one item on the agenda. That is, we have to consider the applications for late membership. On the 8th and 10th of October, the 12 letters of applications have been sent out to members via papers PTSE 5/14-15 and 6/14-15. I have asked the clerk to invite the 12 members to attend today's meeting. Among them, 7 have written to me indicating that they don't think that it is necessary to attend the meeting. Copies have been sent to you. For the remaining 5, 4 of them a few days ago indicated to the Secretariat that they are not attending today's meeting. Only Mr. Paul Chair is attending the meeting, but then he would only be able to make it the earliest 11:30. So please note the position. Before you consider whether we should accept the applications or not, well, according to paragraph 4, capital B of the relevant rules, the chairman may agree to accept late membership on grounds of indisposition or absence from Hong Kong. A request for late membership on grounds other than indisposition or absence from Hong Kong shall be put to the subcommittee. The subcommittee shall accept such applications only when sufficient grounds have been provided. I suggest that we go through the applications from the 12 members in the order as shown on the agenda. Any members wishing to speak? Mr. Chen Kin-fung. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now, the pro-establishment camp members would like to ask for late membership. I think we know the reason. This is because the Pan-Democrats have upset the previous tacit agreement. I think in the past we used to be able to keep the majority. This is the case with the FC. Now, suddenly, a few minutes before the close of application for membership, a large number of members flooded the committee with membership applications. In order to maintain the balance, pro-establishment camp members would like to join. So if we want to mend our relations, and in fact, such a membership would have reflected the representativeness. Given the very special circumstances, I would suggest that we accept the applications for late membership from the pro-establishment camp. Thank you. Next, Mr. Lee Cheuk-yen. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just now, Mr. Chen Kin-fung said that we were upsetting the former or previous tacit agreement. I think the Pan-Democrats also raised certain issues with the pro-establishment camp when we discussed the agreement, but then you didn't agree to our requests. So in a way, you can see that actually you are also rejecting the consensus. So in this way, we can only go our own way. So I want to set the record straight. For this year, we are not able to have this tacit agreement, and that's why we go on our own ways. Mr. Chairman, we believe that since we put down our names to join the subcommittee, now we have got the applications from them. Let's go through the grounds one by one. Mr. Chairman, you have said that some of them would come, others would not. So, Mr. Chairman, are you going to put questions to them? That is for those who are present. While for those who are not attending, what would you do with them? Their applications. I came late, so perhaps I have missed something. It doesn't matter. Now, Mr. Chan Kim-po talked about mending the relations. I think what is important is that we have a reasonable political system, and then that's the best way to mend the relations. But then if you want to cling on to small circle elections and functional constituencies, then the so-called relationship is not built on any sort of ground but floating sand or moving sand. We need something more solid, that is a democratic foundation. To answer your question, Mr. Lee Cheuk-yen, let me remind members the following. 12 members have applied for late membership, among whom 7 have written to me indicating that they don't find it necessary to attend today's meeting. For the remaining 5, 4 of them a few days ago also indicated to the clerk that they would not be attending today's meeting. Only Mr. Paul Chair has agreed to attend the meeting. In fact, I would like to ask the clerk this question. For the 4 out of the remaining 5 members, they said that they would not be coming today, but does it mean that they are going to attend a meeting for a meeting held on some other days? No, they haven't given such an indication. So you may take it that among the 12 applicants, only Mr. Paul Chair has indicated his wish to attend this special meeting. But then he can only make it no earlier than 11:30. Now, Mr. Lee Cheuk-yen, for your question, I think I can open the floor to members to have a discussion. Well, are we going to hear from Mr. Paul Chair? If he can make it at 11:30, then we'll get words from him. And then for the rest, are we going to go through the letters one by one or what? I'm open to your suggestions. Now, the clerk has also said that we have got another option. That is, we can have a joint debate about the 12 applications. We can also have a joint voting on the 12 application letters. I have an open mind, so your views are invited. Mr. Lee Cheuk-yen, yes, just to respond to you. Now, each of them has put forward a ground. I think it's better for us to go through the grounds one by one. But then if the ground is the same and there's a single one, then of course we can consider joining the debates. For some of them, they've said that it's all about there's all because of the assistance problem. I think it is a question of integrity and ethics, because I'm not sure whether they are trying to blame it on their assistants. Maybe our clerk can assist here. Among the 12 applications, please tell us how many of them said that it was all because of their assistants. Our clerk, as usual, has been very efficient in assisting the chair. Now, the clerk has come up with a summary. Let me say this to you. Among the 12 members, as far as the grounds for late application are concerned, each of them said that it was due to an omission or a mistake on the part of their assistant, and therefore they were not able to make it before the deadline. So 8 out of 12. One of them said that the PWC needs to work efficiently. 3 of them have said that they were otherwise engaged and they were not able to put in their applications in time, so 12. So basically, there are 4 grounds for application. The next to speak, Ms. Emily Lau. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just now, Mr. Chen Kin-pong talked about having an understanding. Well, a year ago or 2 years ago, you called it an understanding or whatnot. Yes, we were able to have a word. Mr. Yip Kong-kim represented the pro-establishment camp and talked to the pan-democrats. Regrettably, though the pan-democrats got the majority of the votes during the elections, once we entered the LegCo, we became the minority. In the past, we used to be rational. We tried to see who would be interested in a particular portfolio, and then members will become the chair or the deputy chair accordingly. I was even able to chair the Finance Committee. But since starting from last year, we have been blocked across the board. We didn't say a word, but then for this year, we had a meeting among ourselves, and then we found that they would monopolize all the posts. They took up the chairmanship, and then we feared that they would be monopolizing all the posts for the 4 years. So we tried to have a word with them, but then they would not budge. And so there's no understanding. So it's not a matter of a sudden attack or ambushing. So it's all a matter of whether you are able to get enough votes or not. It is not being sort of what you call ungentlemanly. Well, when there was no discussion, no agreement, then we just work on our own. So we need to set the records straight. If we do our part, then we join the subcommittees or the panels, and then we get elected. In the past, we didn't query any late applications. But then in June last year, Long Hair went to jail. Albert Chen would like to join a subcommittee, but then he was rejected by the pro-establishment camp. So we were really surprised. Now, what is happening is that there can be no talks, no negotiations, and the relationship is very tense. It is most regrettable. Lee Cheuk-yin has got it right. That is, we would like to have universal suffrage, and then we just get elected on the strength of the number of votes. Even in other parliaments and legislature, members from different parties would have some sort of understanding. Now, starting from last year, they would not allow us to have any posts, and unless they were willing to sort of leave a gap for us. Now, for this year, they would not want to have a word with us at all, and so it was a free-for-all. I think we should make sure that citizens understand why we have such a dispute, such a large problem. Who is to be blamed? I think I find it regrettable. Now, if like last time, if you had allowed Albert Chen to join, then that would be good, but you wouldn't allow it. We try our best to operate within most unfair circumstances, and yet you won't allow this to happen. This is outrageous. Now, I'm trying to get your assistance. That is, whether we should have a joint debate and whether we should have a joint voting. Would you like to indicate your position?
I don't care, but I think now we are facing this situation. I really regret it. I don't think it's necessary. Next, Ms. Ho, and then Mr. Lee Kwok-kin. Ms. Ho? Now, talking about tacit agreement, we have already held elections this year, and proportional representativeness in the council has already been lost. ESC, PWSC, and FC have statutory powers, and the proportion of members from different political parties has already been lost. And we can see that in this council, most of the members are from the pro-establishment camp, but does that reflect the situation in the community? I think we are all very clear about that. Well, let us talk about it in a peaceful manner. Now, in the past, we were very lenient about late application. Now, you rejected Mr. Albert Chan's application because he wanted to replace Leung Kwok-kin. But for other committees, we have been very lenient, and we understand that if you are rejected in this subcommittee, you can still go to the FC. But you have to at least you have to tell us the true reason. Mr. Paul Chair has given us a true reason, and Ms. Chung also gave us a true reason, but we just don't agree to her wording. Mr. Paul Chair told us the true story. He said that the situation has changed, so that's why now he wants to sign up. I feel uncomfortable about shirking the responsibility onto assistants. I think for the work of assistants, the councillor would have to be held responsible. So I urge the pro-establishment camp members go back and rewrite the letter. Now you can tell us that you want to join the subcommittee and become a member of the majority. Just tell us the truth. Don't pass the buck to your assistants. I think that's unfair. And at least you have some mandates from the public. So I think you should also be held responsible for what your assistants did. You should not ask your assistant to bear the responsibility for you. So, Chairman, can we ask these members who are applying for late membership to rewrite their letters, because their reasons are totally incredible and it's difficult for us to approve this kind of application. Ip Kwok-kin, and then followed by Ms. Chung. Thank you, Chairman. I would like to clarify. I am not speaking on behalf of the pro-government camp. I just think that now we are discussing about the arrangements for chairman and chairman of different committees. In the past, we have had good cooperation. We tried to evade problems, and we want to enjoy mutual benefits. So I would like to make it clear. Well, some may say that because I'm directly elected, so all the directly elected members are superior here. That is not the case. Well, when councillors are here, they all have equal rights and interests, and they should be allowed to give play to their ability and authority. The pro-establishment camp has always welcomed members. If members applied late, we have been lenient. But you are always talking about Albert Chan. Why was Albert Chan's application was rejected? Because he said blatantly that he would filibuster after joining PWSC. So why didn't you say this? You just say that the pro-establishment can bar him from the subcommittee. That is not a fact. And for councillors, assistants, I'm sure councillors know very well what they are talking about. They themselves are clear about the situation. I don't think you should query whether it's the oversight of their assistants or not. When you also want to summon the assistants to hear and grill them, I think that's outrageous. Why do they have to be interrogated by you? Why do you have to make that decision? The only decision you have to make is whether the late applications will be approved. So I think you really have to respect the operation of the PWSC, and that will benefit our future cooperation. Next, Ms. Cheung, and then Ms. Sin Chung Kai. Chang Lai-wan. Just now, Ms. Emily Lau was very angry, and she said that for councillors who are barring other members from joining the PWSC outrageous. Well, what she meant was Mr. Albert Chen's application last year, and his application was turned down, so that's why she's so unhappy. But I want to point this out. Now, if you think that barring other members from joining PWSC is outrageous, then why do we have to repeat this outrageous behavior? Chairman. Well, for PWSC, we have never stopped members from joining our subcommittee. If we think things happening in other committees should not be repeated at PWSC, then let us stop it from happening here. And well, we are all here to do important things, and we should be accommodating. We should be tolerant. We shouldn't be looking at minute details. Mr. Sin Chung Kai and Mr. Lo Wai-kwok. Chairman. Stopping other members from joining PWSC is not right, according to the pro-establishment camp. But if that is the case, then they made a mistake last year. If they can apologize publicly and if they can remedy their mistakes, then I think it will help the matter now. So I wonder if any one of them would like to do that, because last year they barred Albert Chen from joining the PWSC. If they can admit their mistake in public, I'm sure it can affect our decision later. They really should search their soul about it. Chairman, I think more space should be given to the late applicants. They should be asked to rewrite the letters giving us new explanations, because I don't think their grounds now are very sound. What is said in the letter may be a lie. Well, yes, we don't necessarily know why they are submitting their late application, but I think they haven't told us the real reasons. Now, if they think that, well, it was a mistake because they omitted the importance of joining PWSC, then they can tell us, frankly. Now, if you think this is a sneak attack, well, yes, it can be a sneak attack because the system is not fair. But it's not our fault. We didn't make a mistake. Well, according to PWSC Procedures Rule 4, only those members who were suffering from indisposition or they were absent from Hong Kong were allowed to submit late membership. So for these members, if they tell the truth, then we would handle their applications differently. So according to Mr. Sin Chung Ka-yu, want us to incorporate this procedure. That is, we have to tell apart those members who are speaking the truth and those who are lying. Yes, the Communist Party always say that if you are honest, then we will be more lenient. On the 24th of October, PWSC 17, on that paper, the clerk has already invited the late applicants to submit any supplementary information, and such kind of information should be provided to the Secretariat by the 7th of November. The clerk has never received any supplementary information from these late applicants. This is a fact that I want to tell you. Next, Mr. Lo Wai-kwok and then Mr. Abraham Sheikh. Mr. Lo first. At the last legislative session, I was the chairman of the PWSC, and I remember the government submitted over 40 projects, and we could only handle 24, and many of them have to be brought to these legislative session, and now the government has 89 projects waiting in line. We have a lot of work to do this year. If some members are concerned about public works and they want to join the PWSC, no matter what the reason is for their late application, I think they should be allowed to join. I don't think we should care so much about the incentive. The most important thing is that we have our hands full, so we can have more members to do the work. And if these projects are delayed, it will have a significant impact on a lot of people, such as professional people, architects, engineers, as well as construction workers. And also Hong Kong people will be influenced, and Hong Kong's economy will be undermined. So I think we should speed up our work. Now we have to hold a special meeting to look at the late applications. I think it is ridiculous. For this batch of members, now they are making late applications, and if you are unhappy about that, I think that can be settled by a voting. But I hope this can be handled as soon as possible so that we can focus on public works. That would be more practical, and that is actually very urgent. So I think there's no need for us to waste time here. Don't ask them for further explanations, and we do not need to summon the assistants. I think that's just a waste of time.
Before I continue with the list and invite Abraham Sheikh to speak, I observed that when I quoted Rule 4B of the PWC procedures, some of the members were not present, so let me quote again. I quote, "The chairman may agree to accept late membership on grounds of indisposition or absence from Hong Kong." Let me pause here. For the 12 members asking for late membership, they haven't cited the ground of indisposition or absence from Hong Kong. So this particular sentence doesn't apply. Let me continue to quote. A request for late membership on grounds other than indisposition or absence from Hong Kong, and all the 12 applications fall into this category, shall be put to the subcommittee. The subcommittee shall accept such applications only when sufficient grounds have been provided. Unquote. Next, Mr. Shet Lai Him. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You have clearly spelled out the provision under 4B. So they were able to work through it via 2 channels, but they didn't. In the past, we didn't actually enforce Rule 4B. I think, like last year, Mr. James Tan became interested and we allowed him in to join the PWC. Well, let's not dwell on the question of whether a member would like to join or not. I think if someone is interested and he will contribute to the meeting, then it is something good. I think, Chairman, you've always been very fair. What worries me is that if we drag on, I think for this year, $3.6 billion were endorsed. In the past, I think the amount was $90 billion. So if we drag our feet, then the impact on our economy, the impact on the local workers will be huge. In other words, today, when we haven't got sufficient workers to fill the posts, will be converted in a position when workers don't have any jobs. I think we should deal with the requests here, and then the FC can be spared and can save some time. Let me make the first step, and then in the future we can always cooperate. I look forward to a more harmonious legislative council so that we can work for the public good. Raymond Chen and then James Tong. Mr. Chen. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just now, when pro-establishment camp members spoke, they said that we had a backlog. We have had a backlog. Well, according to this logic, the fewer the members, the more efficient it will be. By adding a dozen or more members to a meeting, it means that we have to allow more time for members to speak. So please do not cite the ground of efficiency to ask for late membership. I think you just try to cite grand excuses. I think we always know that it is a case of the majority rules. We are the minority among the minorities, so I am most aware of this. I've never seen any tacit understanding. We don't even have tacit understanding between the Pan-Democrats and us. They joined at the last minute. We were not made aware of it. They didn't inform us. They followed the rules, and then they joined the subcommittee, and that's it. You talk about precedents. I don't think we should go along that direction. I thank the Pan-Democrats for raising the case of Albert Chancellors to set the record straight. Chairman, please process the applications ASAP. They haven't come. I don't want to waste your time. Of course, you all try to find something to say. If you want to mend the relationship between the pro-establishment camp and the Pan-Democrats, and I think the most urgent issue is to reshuffle the FC agenda by having a dozen more members joining. I think, according to your logic, it would only lower the efficiency. That's it. James Tong. Chairman, there's only one thing before us. We have to consider whether they have sufficient grounds. When we look at the applications from the 12 members, we have to check whether they have got a sufficient ground. Just now, Mr. Chen Kin-po spoke. He thought that the pro-establishment camp is the majority in the legislature, and he thinks that the Pan-Democrats have gone back on certain tacit understanding. Pan Democrats are saying that there isn't any tacit understanding for this session. Now they are saying that we have overturned the tacit understanding, so they have to join. Of course, he's only speaking on his speaking for himself. He's saying that the late applicants should be approved so as to restore the balance. Now, I think members have got different grounds for application. So my understanding would be for the applications to be voted on separately. Now, let me respond to what Mr. Chen Kin-po has said. Well, Mr. Chen Kin-po is a member, so he is not speaking on behalf of the 12 members. There's not a ground cited on their behalf. Mr. Chairman, I don't want to have a dialogue with Mr. Chen. If Mr. Chen thinks that he is giving a ground which is representative of one of the 12 members, please tell us. If he's speaking on behalf of the 12 members, please say so. I make this point because I want to be clear about the grounds put forward by the 12 members, whether in writing form, orally, or in some other materials. I want to go down the list one by one. Say the first one appearing on the list is Andrew Leung. So if Mr. Chen Kin-po doesn't speak on their behalf, then I have to be clear about this. And then just now some members talked about precedent cases. They refer to the case of Albert Chen. Well, a member said that Albert Chen would like to join because he would like to filibuster. If his sole purpose was to filibuster, then it would not have been a sufficient ground. Now, I think in this way, if a member claims that he doesn't join to filibuster, but he says that he joins the meeting so as to enhance the efficiency, that is, if a question is put to members to stop the questions or to make sure that the government will have the support from the pro-establishment camp. Now, if a member tries to join so as to make sure that the government's proposals will be endorsed, if that's his sole purpose, then to me it is not a sufficient ground. This is because he could have done so before the deadline. So any late application on such a ground could not be regarded as a sufficient ground. Thank you. Mr. James Toh, I would like to tell you that for the 12 members who are asking for late membership, none of them have cited the reason given by Mr. Chen Kin-po. That is, Pan Democrats overturned the tacit understanding, and it is for the sake of mending the relations. My understanding is that Mr. Chen Kin-po has no intention to act as their spokesman. We are done with the first round. Oh, sorry, Ms. Claudia Mo for the first time. Mr. Chairman, democracy will always be time-consuming. In the past few years, India and China have always been mentioned in the same breath. The Indian officials would always come forward and say that China they are lagging behind China because they practice democracy. They have tiers of councils, so a proposal has to go through a number of negotiations. But in the case of a totalitarian government, then a man's word would be the last word. So by having a dozen more members, are we going to enhance the efficiency or not? I think it is debatable. I think Mr. Sheikh Lahim said that he would like to have a harmonious legislature. I think you are just trying to quiet down the dissenting voices. I think you just want to rush through the proposals, and this goes against the spirit of monitoring the government. Now, you may very well say that, as Raymond Chen has said, by having more members, even if each member would just say a word or a sentence, then that would have prolonged the meeting. But if you say that you just join but you won't speak, you would just vote for the government's proposals, then it's even worse. You are not monitoring the government. You are just dovetailing the government's efforts. We should follow the procedures. We should not follow what is regarded as tacit understanding. Yes, indeed, it's a matter of ambushing. Now, we do have a mechanism. First of all, the grant given was not indisposition or absence from Hong Kong. So in this case, a sufficient grant would be needed. You are supposed to give a sufficient grant, and most of the members try to blame it on the assistance. I think it is unfair. I'm sure most of the assistants have been very dedicated to their duties. We tried to ask for more information, but then they just ignored us. They would simply try to save time, and they have said that whenever there is an application from any members, we should just say yes. This is unreasonable and unfair. So, what is we facing? It seems that filibustering is unlawful. Albert Chen was not allowed to join. It's a fact. The fact is a fact. Now, you say that it is reasonable because he claimed that he would like to join to filibuster. But if you come here for the sake of objecting and blocking the filibustering, and you would allow the administration to get whatever it asks for, then you are against the spirit of the separation of powers. The legislature is here to monitor the executive. You can't say that you come so as to say yes to the government's proposals so as to save time. I think indeed it is immoral statement about the legislature. I see that Mr. Paul Chair has just arrived. Let me keep him informed of what we are doing. We are now talking about how to deal with the 12 applications from the members concerning late membership. Members have the floor to speak about this. As to the applications, whether they should be debated on jointly and whether they should be voted on jointly, we are getting members' views.
Next, Mr. Tam Yo-chung. When this session started, no matter whether it's the pro-establishment camp or the pan-democrats, we had thorough discussions. We talked about the future arrangements for the chairman and vice chairman of different committees. Well, that was at the beginning of this legislative session. We have talked about this for 2 years, so at the beginning of each legislative year we did that. This year we also did the same because negotiation is conducive to both sides. So at the beginning of this session when we discussed this, we knew that the pan-democrats were not willing to stick to the old arrangements. We were very sincere. We asked them to rethink about sticking to the old rules. That is, we should negotiate and then we should have consent. If we cannot agree on certain things, then we can vote. It's our past practice. So before the deadline for application, we didn't come to a consensus, but we showed them our sincerity. So when we signed up for joining the at PWSC, we didn't change our approach. We did it as we had done before. But two pan-democratic members are just now, yes, they did ambush us. They signed up at the last 5 minutes. Well, you did in accordance with the procedures, so that's okay. However, I think you shouldn't go too far. Mr. Sin Chung-kai asked us to apologize and to rectify our so-called mistakes. Now you have the power, don't abuse it. Now, do you want us to kneel before you, to cry before you, to beg for an opportunity? Do you want us to do that? Is this the way you do things? So don't say things like that. And you also query members' reasons. Now, do you want to use the machine to test whether they have lied? Do you want to use a polygraph? Well, if you don't trust them, you just vote no. Work in accordance with the procedures. Don't just say things like that. That's not conducive to anyone. If one day you become the chief executive, what will happen to us? Will you chop our heads off? You shouldn't act like that. Now we are having a joint debate, and later on there will be a voting. We have expected that you will vote down the applications. That's okay, but we will learn from this lesson. That's what I want to say. Mr. Albert Ho and then Mr. Hu Chi-wai, I would just like to say a few words. Well, after so many years, for the past years actually, the pro-establishment camp has twisted the system to suppress the minority. Well, this is not something new to us. You have got accustomed to it. Now we have a small space to maneuver, and the pan-democrats have a short period of time during which they can be the majority. And now you are saying that we may chop your heads off in the future. Talk about accommodating and who is narrow-minded now. I think people's eyes are very crystal clear. Now, I have been in the council for many years. In the early stage, or in the early years, members were very open about committees. Late applications were acceptable. But all along, there have not been many late applications. Why? Because, well, other than select committees, all the other committees and panels are open. Even though you are not a member of that committee, you can attend the meeting and you can raise your hands to ask questions. So what's the difference? Your views can still be expressed. There's no difference in roles other than voting. However, in the past 8 to 10 years, there have been many more votings because at committee meetings, we would have to show our stance. And some members on both sides may think that they do not have enough members on a particular committee and there are not enough votes, so they are adding members to different committees. And sometimes the chairman would think that, well, you have to think twice before joining a committee. We do not encourage this kind of practice. That is, you join a committee, you vote for a certain person so that he becomes the chairman, and then you never attend the meetings of that committee. We do not want to see that. So you have to know that you are not barred from speaking. You can join any meeting and speak your mind. And now you want to make this late application. It's just because you want to be a voting machine. Well, why do you want to join the PWSC if you are not joining for a vote? You can always attend our meetings. It's just that you do not have a vote. What's the meaning of doing that? We're just talking about 1 year. After voting at the PWSC, you still have to go to the FC where the final decision is made. So why do you want to break the rule here? You want to negotiate and you want to talk, but actually at the beginning of this legislative year, you didn't do that. You didn't make concessions in any area. So that's why we see what's happening today. Next, Mr. Wu Chi-wai. The pro-establishment camp has said it very clearly today. They want to join the PWSC, and the main reason is to vote for the government. For the pro-establishment camp, well, this is, of course, their duty. As what Mr. Albert Ho said, rules and practices have been established in a council after many years. So do we want to break the rule now? Because it may mean bad consequences. Paul makes a late application and he says that now he has a new perspective, so that's why he wants to join the PWSC. Well, we understand that. We understand why Mr. Paul TSE wants to apply for late membership. However, for other councillors, they shirk the responsibilities onto their assistants. And of course, people may query and they may get suspicious. Well, the applicants have been invited to this meeting to explain clearly to us why they didn't apply in the first place. If they can give us reasonable grounds, then we would have a better understanding of the situation. But if they just want to join the PWSC so that they can have one more vote for the government, then this will bring about more difficulties to this council, because through this mechanism we are encouraging members to join a committee without thinking clearly. They haven't thought whether they are really interested in the subject and whether they want to make contribution in that area. They just want to give their vote to the government. This is highly irresponsible. I think the most reasonable thing to do is to ask the late applicants to come here to explain clearly to us why they think they want to join the PWSC. It's not just a discussion. We will have to make a final decision relying on their explanations. Otherwise, there will be no rules, and we are just encouraging members to become part of a voting machine. So I want to ask the chairman to do this. Please invite the late applicants to come here so that they can explain to us officially why they want to join the PWSC and why in the past they didn't think there was a need to join the subcommittee, and now they think they need to do it. Next, Dr. Kwok, and Mr. Paul TSE also wants to speak. So according to our past practice, a non-member if a non-member raises his hand, we'll let him speak. Now we are talking about how we should handle the applications for late membership. So first, Dr. Kwok. Well, Chairman, I think it is pitiful. I think the Council cannot gain the trust of the public today. If a member wants to make a late application, but he refuses to attend a meeting for the discussion of late applications, he doesn't even have the courage to do that. I find it highly unacceptable. Now we see Mr. Paul TSE is here. Now you have seen his written explanation. That explanation is a more reasonable one, and he himself is here. As for other members, I really resent what they are doing. They do not attend this meeting and they put the blame on their assistants. Yes, their assistants get paid, but they are not paid to be framed and to act as a scapegoat. Now, if you cannot discharge your duty and the central authorities are unhappy, then just tell us. You don't come up with an excuse and then put all the blame on your assistants. You don't have the courage, and I do not respect people who do not have courage. Now, if they do not respect themselves, then, well, even though they do not respect themselves, we would still like to give them a chance. So I want to give them as much chance as possible so that they can tell us why they want to make this late application. They should either rewrite their explanation letter or retract their remarks in the past, that is, putting the blame on their own assistants. That is totally immoral. Now, if you want to be a hand-raising machine, if you want to support the government, no matter what it does, then just tell us. If you have the courage to do it, you need to have the courage to admit it. Now, if you want to vote, you have a lot of opportunities at the FC meetings. So, of course, we understand that maybe they have been criticized by the central authorities, so that's why they are doing it now. Some DAB members said that we should have mutual trust. Well, we try to do that, but actually it's them who monopolized all the chairmanships and vice chairmanships. Now, because we have a twisted system at the council, and because we have the FC, because we have the functional constituency system, so that's why they reap all the benefits. When they have the benefits, of course, they won't say a word. And now they discover that they have done something wrong. And then they are telling us they are very sincere. Now, if you are so sincere, how come the dozen late applicants are not here? I am really sorry to see councillors of such low quality here. Now, we still want to give you time. We can hold another special meeting so that these late applicants can attend in person.
Mr. Paul Chair and then Mr. Frederick Fung. First of all, I'd like to thank the Chair and other members for calling a special meeting over this matter, given you have a very tight schedule. Let me first of all explain why I didn't join in the first place. On the one hand, I thought that I had a lot on my plate, so there was a heavy workload for me. Secondly, as Albert Ho had said, once I joined a panel or a committee, I would like to be wholehearted in the work. Now, let me explain. For the PWC, as it goes without saying, we have a backlog. We must deal with the items efficiently. Otherwise, there will be huge problems with overspending. So I want to steer it back to the right track. And it's not just for this subcommittee, but it is true for other panels and committees as well. As far as the procedures are concerned, there is a new development. First of all, for the rules and procedures, I think we have got high expectations. In the past, we didn't need a special meeting like this one to deal with late membership application. So it is a self-evident situation. Chairman, time and again, you have also referred to Rule 4A, and you try to interpret it bit by bit clearly. So more and more members are concerned about the enforcement of the rules and procedures. We have high expectations, and it has become more frequent to have to resort to the rules and procedures. And certainly, I think the development has become more serious than I have previously thought. So for the three reasons I've outlined, and if the vicious cycle is to be allowed to continue, then it will only make things worse. And as someone from the legal profession, I've always been interested in studying the rules and procedures. I think, judging from my previous performance and your judgment of me, I think I can be a member who is unbiased, fair, and give you some independent input, and then the meetings can operate smoothly and normally. And then for Rule 4A, I think the grounds that have been cited are very clear. There is an absence from Hong Kong or indisposition. But what else would constitute a sufficient ground? I think in the past we didn't give it much thought. Now we have to see whether we should be strict or not about the sufficient ground. We don't have a clear definition, and it is not a closed phrase. And then going back to the examples given by members, in the case of Albert Chen, I think that was unique because he claimed that he had to become a member so as to replace Leung Kwok-kin, so as to continue with his work, with his destruction. For me, I don't have any, relatively speaking, destructive ground, and I don't join simply on a political ground. So when you consider what is a sufficient ground, don't have a narrow interpretation, otherwise everybody will be harmed. Please consider my grounds, please consider my sincerity, and please support my application. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Next, Frederick Fung, and then Gary Fan. Mr. Chairman, I have to raise one point. First of all, I agree to having this special meeting today to deal with this matter. I cannot accept what the pro-establishment camp has said. That is, this is immoral, this is something that has been agreed, and it is wrong. I can't agree. For the Pan-Democrats, when we had a meeting over lunch so as to talk to the pro-establishment camp about the chairmanship, my understanding was that no proposals from us would be accepted by them. We said that against such a background, it would be free for us to run for the various posts of chairmanship. And we also notified the pro-establishment camp. So it's not a matter of immoral lies or deceiving anybody or going back on the 2-year-old tacit understanding. No, not at all. On the other hand, it's because you don't accept members from outside who are professionally qualified, who are experienced in such matters to take up the chairmanship. And therefore, we would like to have a competition. If you call it a battle, then everything is in broad daylight. So we made it clear to you that we would like to have the posts in a number of committees. If you don't allow us to take them up, we cannot fight for them. So all that we could have done was to work under the rules and the mechanism, and everything is in broad daylight and it is above board. And we've been following the words of the rules. We've been following the mechanism. Well, is it just a matter of being solely rational without regard of our sentiments? Well, human beings are a mixture of both. I think if we become too sentimental, then we need to remember the rules. The FC chairman used to be too sentimental, and then suddenly he would send somebody out, and then suddenly he would allow that person to stay. So I think it's better for us to stick to the mechanism, stick to the rules and procedures. Chairman, I think you're right, and we should just follow the rules to handle the applications. In the past, we weren't too meticulous about the grounds given. Now, on this occasion, I found it surprising to see that the wordings as well as the grounds given are more or less the same, saying that it's the assistant's fault. I hope they are not conspiring with each other to blame it on their assistants. I think we should just say the truth. We shouldn't all say that it's all because of the assistants. So it's easy for people to have such a perception. I don't like this. I don't know whether they are not telling the truth or whether they are trying to persuade us to take their words. Gary Fan and then Ang Yu Chung. How many minutes do I get? 4. 2 points to make, Chairman. I think, Chairman, you should make arrangements in such a way that we'll deal with the applications one by one. There are 12 late applications. I understand that 8 of them have blamed it on their assistants, and Paul Chair is the exception, saying that he has got a new point. So I think they should be dealt with separately. Chairman, I think we should operate according to the rules of procedures, and we should come back to the right track. I've noted the chair of the DAB, Tam Yu-chung's words. He said that we used to be able to talk, and then we had understanding about the distribution of posts. I don't think that's the whole truth. In particular, as a new member, my understanding is that in the past, pan-democrats and the pro-establishment camp had a consultation, and they tried to reflect public opinion when it came to the distribution of posts. I think this has been broken. The pro-establishment camp took up the majority of the posts when it comes to chairman and deputy chairman of panels. In other words, when we monitor the government, we cannot reflect the proportion of mandate we have obtained from the people. I think this is a serious problem. If we follow the rules and procedures, then you would recall that as it has been observed when Mr. Lo Wai-kok was chairing the PWC meetings, he tried to send messages to members when he found that there weren't enough members to vote for the proposal. But then he made a joke of himself when he sent it wrongly to us as well through the WhatsApp grouping. And then Michael Tian was allowed 7 minutes, but for us we only got 4 minutes, and we were interrupted. And for Hon Leung-sing to chair the FC meetings, it was even more alarming. And then in May, June, July this year, he shocked the whole world when he chaired the FC meetings over the controversial issues. When we were not in our seats, he tried to rush through the proposals and then proceeded to vote. Now, the pro-establishment camp and the royalists saw that the pan-democrats were more united than before when we joined the PWC and the ESC. We followed all the rules and procedures. How come that the pro-establishment camp would like to overturn the result and they blame it on the assistants? I think we need to be cautious. For the grounds put forward by Paul Che, he claimed that he's being fair, unbiased. I'm sorry, I can't agree with him. He put up a disguise of being fair. In particular, he accused Albert Chan for being a destructive force when he tried to join the PTSC earlier this year. If he made such statements, then he's not honoring his word for being a fair member. I think we need to follow the rules and procedures. We should come back to the right track. Now, the last one to speak in the first round, Leung Yu-chung. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Time and again, Chairman, you have emphasized that if a member would like to put in a late application, either he was out of Hong Kong or he was indisposed, he could not have joined. The only exception would be that he had got a sufficient ground. So, unless somebody has a sufficient ground, we should not allow a member to join. So, from this perspective, perhaps we should visit the issue. What is meant by sufficient? If the ground given is not sufficient, then it will become a precedent for the rest of the term or for future terms. In other words, any member can give a flimsy reason or excuse and expect to be accepted as a member. So I think colleagues should consider the word sufficient. Yes, you can look at the political perspective as well, but ultimately it all boils down to whether the ground is sufficient or not. Now, Paul Che was very detailed in giving his grounds, but of course it is up to us to judge whether it's sufficient or not. He said that he is sincere. I think he's sincere and he takes matters seriously because he has told us in a very organized way as to why he would like to join. Now, Chair, I have this question. Sufficient ground. That is, you need to give a sufficient ground as to why you haven't put in the application prior to the deadline. Had you been out of town or had you been indisposed, then the timing would not be on your side. But then Paul Che talked about wanting to make the legislature fair, and you're familiar with the rules. Now, everybody would like to join a subcommittee so as to assist with the work of the subcommittee. But then if you have regarded such work as so important, then how come that you would have missed the deadline? I think this is something that you need to address. You haven't explained this point. So when it comes to being sufficient or not, we really have to find out if the ground is sufficient enough. Say, for example, I was indisposed and so I couldn't have joined in time. Some members have said that the assistants have forgotten or the assistants had omitted it. Could it be regarded as sufficient? I think members should talk more about the reasons put forward as to whether there are sufficient grounds. So, Paul Chair, I would like to give you the floor as to why you weren't able to do it before the deadline.
Mr. Leung, it's not that I do not want Mr. Paul Chair to answer your questions, but now we're still discussing, and now I am asking for your assistance as to how we should handle these 12 late applications. Are we going to have a joint debate or a joint voting? I think, well, among the 12 late applicants, Mr. Paul Chair is the only one who chooses to attend this meeting, so definitely I will give him time to respond. But now other members are still waiting in the queue to ask questions and to express their views. Should I first allow them to speak and then I will invite Mr. Chair to answer? Well, I said just now I would give him my time. But now, Chairman, you have used up my time. Sorry about that. I didn't ask for additional time. I want Mr. Chair to answer using my time. When I started to speak, it was 3 minutes 12 seconds. So first, I apologize to you, Mr. Leung. So, Mr. Chair, can you make use of this 48 seconds to answer his questions? I'll try my best. Just now, I said that, well, for sufficient grounds, there has been no precedent before. So now, if we're setting precedent, we have to be very careful. And for this, in this position, it has already been put down as one of the grounds. So this is not a very good sample. So what should be regarded as sufficient grounds? Well, I've told you my thoughts, and actually I gave you two reasons. First, I was worried that I would be overloaded with work. And second, some members also said it just now, do not join a committee lightly because you would have to spend a lot of time and effort on it. But I looked at the recent developments, and the Council is now more chaotic than what I expected. That's what I discovered after the deadline. Thank you. Mr. Chung Shui-kan. Chairman, I would like to reiterate, for elected members, no matter you're in the FC or GC, you have mandates from the people. And this is a council with where we are representatives of the people. As for the council rules, they should be used properly, and they should not be abused. And we should use the rules very carefully. And now a dozen members want to join, and if you resort to council violence to stop them, that is unjust. If their right to vote are deprived, that is unjust. Yes, there are some rules, but the chairman has discretion. If you are also law-abiding, we shouldn't be seeing Occupy Central movement. Now, if we want to defend a capitalist council, then the chairman should have the right to decide whether these late applicants should be allowed to join. Otherwise, the pan-democrats would just be hypocrites. Mr. Chung Shui-kan, I just now quoted Rule 4B of the PWSC procedures, and you were not here, so I would like to read it out again. Well, you don't have to read it out. I'm very clear about this. As to whether you do it or not, it's your own decision. You decide whether you are a hypocrite. Mr. Chung Shui-kan, I do not want to argue with any individual member here. And this is a meeting that is open to the public. Everybody can see. But I want to point out a mistake of yours. I don't want you to speak basing on a misunderstanding. The chairman, that is I myself, does not have the discretion. Do you hear me? No discretion. Unless the late applicant applies on grounds of 1, indisposition, or 2, absence from Hong Kong. Other than these 2 grounds, I do not have the discretion. Do you hear me? Yes, I hear you. You have the discretion. You just don't use it. Mr. Chung Shui-kan, we are in a serious council. If you think I have the discretion, please point out the rule which shows that I have the discretion to me. I'll give you time. How much time do you need? Should I adjourn the meeting so that you can find out the relevant rule? I'll adjourn the meeting now. I have declared that the meeting will be adjourned.